Whenever we discuss great creation, we often only include finished products or creators that had access to top-of-the-line gear, an extensive budget, or both. But what about the aspiring creators like you and I that don't have access to that just yet? Does that mean our work isn't good enough, that we can't compete, or that we might not be as talented? It's self-imposed questions like these that make it hard to stay consistent in creating. But what if I told you there just might be an answer to all of these questions? Brief intermission. I realize this is my first time speaking to the camera on this channel, so I feel like a slight introduction is needed. Where do I begin? I was born January 4th, and now I'm just playing. My name is Kylan. Yes, Kylan, not Kylan, even though it's spelled with an O. I go by Kai too, if that's easier. Growing up, I was the youngest of three, Now with that out the way, let's get into the reason why you clicked on this video. Honestly, the simple answer really is, when it comes to creating great content, videos, films, etc., the most important thing isn't gear or budget, but it's the idea that you had and how you execute on bringing it to life. That's real! That's real! Now I know you're probably thinking that's easy to say when I have an entire camera setup, so let's go over all the gear I used in, shall we? All in all, my gear is probably $1,200 at the max, which is far less expensive than the camera everybody thinks they need, the Sony FX3. But in an effort to back up my claims, let's do a small breakdown of a few of my favorite shots that I've been able to produce so far. Alright, so going right into it, the first scene we'll be breaking down is this shadow scene from an unreleased, extremely short film titled Pieces. The idea for the scene was to have the character under a spotlight to create this larger than normal shadow that represented that person's soul and emotions, while the character in front represented the facade that a lot of us put on when we go through different internal battles. The inspiration of it actually came from Kendrick Lamar's Saturday Night Live performance. Yeah, his execution of it though had his shadow dancing behind him, but I just love the aesthetic of it, and I was like, I want to use that for one of my own shots at some point. I'm not gonna lie, the execution of it was very unconventional. I have a desk lamp that has a clamp attached to it, and so I was able to just clamp it onto an ironing board in order to even create the spotlight effect. From there, I have multiple takes of the shadow scene of me acting out, the shadow, the emotions I wanted to show and portray. Then I had a separate take of me being in front of the shadow as that facade I talked about earlier. I was able to combine the two takes together by utilizing the roto brush tool in After Effects. I was able to just put that on top of that shadow by scaling it and making it a little bigger. But of course, the roto wasn't perfect, and stylistically, I was already gonna make it black and white, but black and white helped to cover up some of those flaws that would have shown even more in color. Now moving on to the next scene, we'll be breaking down my favorite shot from our last YouTube video, this hand-drawn animation effect. Honestly, this wasn't even the original idea, but I thank God that it worked out even better than I originally thought. The original idea was to have the light illuminating on my face as if the screen had me in some sort of trance, but I honestly either looked dumb, stupid, or scary, so I decided to scrap it. But I decided to keep the idea of the screen brightening, which I was able to do with this LED light that I have, and just gradually increase the brightness over time. I put the camera to the side of the laptop, which created a nice composition, but honestly left a ton of negative space that I was able to just play around with. The idea of hand-drawn words was already in mind because of the title of the video kind of being as if it was the opening to a letter. So I just put the footage of the laptop inside of After Effects and I just let my creativity flow. If any of you have ever made those small flipbook animations of like the bouncing ball on some sticky notes, that's the key to a clean animation. How each image moves the bigger picture forward. One thing I did want to know is I made the brush settings a custom 4 frames per image because this gave the mind enough time to comprehend it while avoiding the tedious work of 1 frame per image. So the last scene we're going to be breaking down is also from our last YouTube video, and it's this sticky note scene right here. To be fair, the execution of it was extremely simple. It literally was just writing on a bunch of sticky notes, making a mess on the floor, and laying on top of them. But I mainly wanted to shine light on the idea itself since we're discussing how ideas matter more than gear or budget. The idea was to visualize people sleeping on their talents, dreams, desires of their hearts, and all those things that could really be within them. Hence me laying on top of all of them. What was written on the sticky notes were a various assortment of career paths and occupations that a lot of people desire and go after. I say all that to say, regardless of budget and gear, as long as the idea is strong enough, it'll be felt no matter how complex or simple the execution of it was. Hopefully these breakdowns truly show that gear and budget, really aren't the end all be all of your project. They just simply add on to the idea to help you produce it at its highest quality. So if you weren't already, I encourage you to think outside the box a bit more when you create, especially when you're creating by yourself. You never know, the piece that you need to create the best shot you've produced so far is right next to you. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. God bless.